Okay, welcome everybody to Long School of Medicine's Club PreMed. This topic is a popular one. It's about making a great application to medical school, and we will be addressing some re-applicant questions also. It's that time of year. I'm Dr. Judy Ann Kellaway. I'm the Associate Dean for Admissions and Outreach here at Long School of Medicine in San Antonio. And it's really, really a pleasure to help y'all on this path. It's hard. There's a lot. There's a lot that you need to know, and I'm happy to be here to help you learn little things that you should know. So I hope that you will hear some new tips and things in this presentation. I think you're going to hear some repetition too, but repetition is good. But you'll find some answers, I hope, for your particular questions. Let me get everything set up and we will get going. So, the first thing I did want to say is that we just had the March match, and some of you might have been or are in this cycle and wanted to hurry over here to hear, tips about making a re-application. And honestly, it could be a little bit early to make, to be thinking that way, because there's a lot of movement in the way. All of the schools have turnover in March, April, and May, even into June. So I'm happy to have you here, and I hope that maybe you'll see some love off the wait list. I'm trying to pull up let me get y'all up here and get my chat up so I can see you. I won't look right now, but later when we get to the question part, I'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's get started. Here we go. So I reorganized a little bit, so I can't ever give the same presentation twice, really. There are always some new things I throw in here. So I'd like you to hear what admissions committees say when they see a wow applicant, which is many, 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 many times. The vast majority of the time we're going, oh my goodness, wow, look at this. Look how organized and disciplined this person was. Those are the things I tell you, right? Be organized, use discipline to tackle your plan. And I've added a new thing in case you haven't heard this before, and that is reflection. And I think reflection comes up through this presentation several times. You really do need to sit down every once in a while and think to yourself, why am I doing this? You come home from painting a house with Habitat for Humanity and you're covered with paint and you're tired and you're sweaty. What did you get out of that? You need to sit right then for a few minutes, 5 or 10, and try to give that some deeper thought, because it shows up in the application and it definitely shows up in the interview setting. So we see people who, we also comment on the variety of people's experiences, how industrious you are, and are you able to express the meaningfulness of the activity? What does that connect to? Reflection, right? That's coming back a few times here. Or we comment on people's strong personal attributes, how a person might have great collaborative skills or leadership skills or be able to communicate very well. So those are some comments that happen a lot at committee. We also hear people say, this person is so dynamic. They have a heart of service. Look how humble this person is. Look at all they've done and how the humility really comes across in this application. That's a pretty meaningful personal attribute for a lot of committees, I think. Look how they give honor to people. You write about your role models. You write about people that you've been shadowing. You write about your patients, and you honor people by doing that in a a connected, meaningful way. And all of that takes reflection, right? So there's industrious again, and there's creative. We can talk about COVID things. A few people asked about like alternatives. And so we're going to give you some ideas there too. I've got some things. I've got a document to share if you haven't seen it already. Some other comments for applicants who, may not be at their strongest right then. Some common things that are commented upon are the motivation. The motivation is just not clear. Okay, so you must convey in all of the components of the application, you have to convey how enthusiastic, how passionate, how you love people, you love science, you are loving medicine as you get to learn it, and why you are motivated to do this. So if I asked you right now, why are you motivated to do medicine? I'm not sure what you would say, but you should give it some thought in a, in some quiet places where you can answer that question. Why are you motivated to do medicine? Okay. And let that answer grow so that it's very clear. So another thing that we hear sometimes is this person really hasn't gotten out of their comfort zone, out of your box, out of your comfort zone. I have a little meme that I'm not showing you today. That's some circles and then out of the comfort zone. And that's where the magic happens, is out of your comfort zone. So we also want to see, do you know what that means? It means maybe you've lived in the home. So part of the reason I love to tell you these things is I didn't do them. And I don't know if I would have gotten into medical school any sooner, but I didn't do them. So my example is really me. Born and raised in the same place, did all my activities in the same place, Houston, Texas, great city, lots of things to do, tons of things. I think I did some good things, but I was in a comfort zone. I was in a comfort zone until after medical school. And when I went on an adventure to the Northeast for internship, that was the first time I got out of my comfort zone. So go do things in other places, get out of your community, get out of circles, go explore circles of different people, explore people from different cultures and backgrounds, etc. I'm going to show you some examples later of what applicants have done that were particularly meaningful to committee members here. Unidimensional, you've all heard the word well-rounded, right? Right? So this is the opposite of being well-rounded. And part of it is that comfort zone thing. In the same place, same community, same types of people, you need to explore and have a variety of experiences, okay? If you're thinking, what is she talking about? Or I need some more, just jot down these questions so we can talk in a little bit, okay? And so you can ask me more specifically. A pretty common thing is that there aren't any experiences related in the personal statement or other essays that relate to your experiences with people. So patient encounters, you're shadowing a physician and interesting things happen, good lessons are learned, you're watching role models, but you're not conveying that in an effective way. But it doesn't just have to be patients or things that you're doing with patients. It could be people that you're helping in community service roles, or role models in your life and experiences with your peers, okay, in different settings. So that takes some, it may not even be on the application as a question or a part of the personal biography, but if you've had some meaningful things happen to you with others, you need to relate those kinds of things, okay, and be thinking all the while, what did I get out of this? Sometimes, so somebody did ask in one of the, there's a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions today and a lot of repeated, a lot of the same things. So, and I tried to fit answers into this presentation. And there were a few questions about, you know, how important is the interview? So I would say that the interview is very important. You know, that's a whole nother recording on the channel that you can look at, and we're probably going to repeat that soon. Personal statement and interview we'll be doing in the coming months for you, so we can go into it in depth. But people, a few people, not many, a few people have trouble in the interview setting, so that it's not showing them at their strongest. Okay. We can talk more about this in that next web chat, but people who have personalities that are outgoing, and you're talkative and smiling and friendly as a natural course of, you know, that's who you are, you have a little bit easier time. Okay. And so there could be bias in there for people who are friendly and smiling and talk, engaging with a lot of people easily. That doesn't come to all of us naturally, does it? There are people here in the audience, I'm sure, that have a hard time because you're a little shy meeting new people. So definitely nerves play a part in an interview setting, right? We'll talk about all that stuff. There are ways to handle that. So you have to, if you know that you're an introvert or a shy person, you have to bring it, you know. And I'll tell you some examples of people who tried to work on those personal attributes, and they made quite a difference in themselves. So sometimes people don't recognize that they're a little less communicative. They're quiet and introverted. And sometimes the interviewer or the committee member will say, gosh, I had a hard time drawing things out of them. So I think that breaks down into a couple of things, and it's interpreted as a lack of motivation, you know, sometimes, or a lack of enthusiasm for this, or that the answers are superficial because you haven't done things in depth. So that's where you can work on those personal attributes of yourselves to make sure that you are conveying enthusiasm and passion and motivation and communicating in a very good way. Okay, even if you're shy. And if somebody says, tell me more about that, then you should be able to. And that takes practice. That's the interview web chat. But getting your hands on questions and giving a thoughtful answer, and then answer the question, okay, tell me more. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Okay, so practice those things and you'll get better at them. And sometimes people express surprise or say, oh, I hate that question. I don't know if it could be the question about, what challenges have you been through, or what are your weaknesses? I don't think that's on our list of questions really, but sometimes people are surprised because there are some emotions that you need to suppress. Okay. And for re-applicants, when re-applicant or an applicant isn't successful, or it's a re-applicant in that cycle, sometimes the person is not successful because we don't see much change. We haven't seen growth. So every day, somehow we all ought to be learning something, doing things, growing, right? And so an application one year to an application the next year, if we don't see growth happening, then that could work to a disadvantage. I don't see my mute all button, and I love having y'all unmuted, but somebody's microphone is echoing or something. I don't think it's me. So if y'all could mute, that'd be super. Thank you so much. So for re-applicants, we'll talk a little bit more about this. We don't see change, or there's nothing current. Like for non-traditional, you're out there working, maybe you even have a family and all kinds of responsibilities, but we're not seeing much happening in that application. So we're looking at everything sort of the same way. We understand when people are in a non-traditional route, but you still have to show us the same sorts of things that other pre-medical applicants are bringing us. So we'll talk about some things like that. And then the path, sometimes the pathway, if you've been out a long time, the pathway is just not very clear. Like, what is your, how did you get to this? You know, so you have to make sure that that pathway is clear. It confused me, my own pathway, for a long time. Like, how did I think of this? Because I wanted to say, gosh, it just like, was this calling? Or I don't know. So I had to like think about it, and actually I realized there was sort of a developmental path that I went to as a teacher to a doctor, and how my interest changed. I'm quite sure the 3 times I applied, I didn't convey that in a very good way. And so make sure that make sure you can kind of explain your pathway. Let's see. So, you know, there are other things at play here if you are a re-applicant or becoming a re-applicant. And I say numbers, part 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 is it's the sheer numbers. There are 50,000 pre-medical applications, 50,000 applicants to medical school every year with 20,000 spots. Okay, so 30,000. So if you are a reapplicant, you're not alone. You have 30,000 friends, you know, to get advice from and talk to and commiserate with you. But you need to, anyway, you need to consider that as a fact. And consider also then that we have many, many, many people who are successful down the line. Okay, so I hope this is not in your path, but one of the greatest, neatest, most accomplished, really great medical students that I ever have known applied 6 times and got in the 7th. And he was phenomenal. So don't give up. You have to see what your heart is telling you, but re-applicants get in all the time. That's the nutshell version. Part 2 is the timeline. And so I'm gonna tell you about the timeline with, I want you to take a big grain of salt with this, because you have heard your college advisors, me, all kinds of, Student Doctor Network, you've read it, you've heard this everywhere. You need to get your application in early, right? So the timeline can work against you, but I would so much rather see a robust, thoughtful, reflection-filled application in August than one somebody hurried to do in May, okay? And it has to be your year. You have had to, if a lot of stuff is in the planned section, that doesn't fly very well. So watch the timeline, take that with a grain of salt. If you use your shoebox and start planning for a May application ASAP, then you have time for reflection. You have time to draft and redraft even the little segments of text that you're going to put in there. Okay. So, you know that there are lots of shoebox videos there on the channel. And we're going to go into it a little bit more, personal biography part. So, and then part 3 is simply the metrics. You have to look, so metrics, it's a 3-legged stool. Metrics have to be strong. We have to know that you're going to be academically capable of doing medical school work, as smart as you are, as accomplished as you are. Medical school is a challenge, and it's going to challenge you. I promise, every single person it presents a challenge to. So you need to look at your metrics, see what we need to do with them. We'll talk a little more later about specifics, but you also need to look at it critically, and look at a good way to start is look at average metrics across the nation to get into medical school. The average applicant pool, the average applicant has a 3.5 something GPA, 3.5 to 6, that the successful applicant, usually across the nation and Texas actually, is a 3.6, 3.7. Okay. If you look, you can look at a region and look at your Texas schools and see what our averages are and things like that for GPA and MCAT. For MCAT across the nation, it goes up every year. Okay. Sorry, but it does. And right now, I think we're at about a 511 for the national average for matriculants, okay, for people who get in. And that's about the Texas average as well. Are you an underseller? Are you, did you put every single thing in your shoebox on your virtual, in your virtual shoebox on your laptop so that you could look at it and transfer everything into your application? I have interviewed people. You've heard me say this. I've interviewed people and I was like, well, that's interesting. Tell me about that summer abroad to Spain. That's kind of neat. It is listed nowhere in the application. And I want to say to the person in that interview, why did you not put this in your, this should be in your application somewhere. That is why you list everything right now, ASAP, in that virtual shoebox, so that you can have this overview of everything you can think of that might make it to your application. Okay, so you don't leave anything out. So don't be an underseller. You don't want to repeat in a bunch of places. We talked about the interview things, and there could be other things that prevent a person from a successful application. We'll get into them. You need to apply in your year. Are you ready? It's not a checklist. It's not a checklist of 100 hours of shadowing and 100 hours of community service and some leadership skills. It is a growth process. It is a maturation and growth process. What are you doing to be a strong student? That's your metrics. What are you doing out there in the world? Your experiences. What are you doing with those experiences to help you be a better person, than a doctor? Okay. But what are you doing to grow yourself and grow those personal attributes that we're looking for? So make sure everything's together. Luke 12:48 is the passage that says, to whom much is given, much is expected. Okay. So we understand, on the other hand, that people have challenges, that you might be first generation. You might not have any resources, other than Club PreMed or your health professions advisors or Reddit or Student Doctor Network. But some of us have had people around us who are in medicine or in science, and they can provide some direction for you. They might not know exactly the current scene. You have to, maybe get some other kinds of information, but you want to use your aunt who's a physician or your parent. I call it the mom factor or the dad factor. So it's great to start there. They probably inspired you. They are probably a wonderful, wonderful role model for you, but don't stop there. Go out on your own. That's the box, right? So that's nice that you've got that in your comfort zone is a medical professional. That's comfortable. That's nice, but you got to get out of that box and do your own thing. Okay. And a key question from application to application for re-applicants is what's changed, what's new and different. You've had a year, you have had 365 days. How many hours and minutes is that to do things and reflect on things? So you should be showing us some new things in that application, in the newer application. You want to make sure you're describing your activities very well without overselling or exaggerating. Sometimes people repeat things. I've told you about the application I saw one year. The honors was a Red Cross award for volunteering. The leadership was leading a little group, a small group in Katrina for Red Cross. Healthcare was Red Cross triage. It was Red Cross, Red Cross, Red Cross. So that was very unidimensional, right? May have been out of the box, may have been out of a comfort zone, but very unidimensional and sort of exaggerated instead of well-rounded. So use the shoebox, and you really have to look at yourself as this is for re-applicants and applicants too, in a critical way, and be real and be able to assess yourself in a real way without, being overly critical of yourself. Are you the best that you can be in every area of the holistic review process? Okay. Everything counts, big things and small things. There might be some small things that you've accumulated in your shoebox that don't really rise to the occasion of the application. But that's why you have that shoebox to open up and look at all those things and see what you want to put in there. All good things are good. Another one of my mottos. If you ask me, I got a certificate in, I was a pharmacy tech, I got a certificate in CPR. All good things are good. Absolutely. But there are high value things, as you know, in probably every section. So you need to know the high value one. And, there are a zillion ways to get there. It's your journey. It's no one else's. Don't compare yourself. Just grow. Just work towards your goals and grow. Okay. So components, not just for long school of medicine. And the other thing is, I love that some of you write and say, I want to go to long, and this is my dream school. It is a dream school, but but I want you to prepare yourself to be a competitive applicant everywhere. This, the more competitive you can be, the more doors open for you. It's wonderful to have choices. Okay. So, here we go. Admissions components are comprised of your MCAT and GPA. There were, in case you're interested, a very small number of schools across the country have eliminated the MCAT requirement for this year. Very small. It's, I think it's 7% or something like that of the 150 schools. So, tackle it. We can talk about that. And I have to say this too, the MCAT is not just a hurdle that we want you to do because we've been doing it for years and we did it and now you have to do it. That's not what it's about. And it's really kind of not about the fact that it's a standardized test and for the rest of your life, you're going to have to take standardized tests. Okay, that's the truth. And success on the MCAT is correlated for decades. We have known that it correlates with success on the board exams, but I don't think that that's the important thing about it for us. I look at it as this: you're taking a lot of information that you've already learned at some point or another. You are taking a huge amount of information and you're getting a grip on it and understanding it in a way that you can, in a short space of time, understand it and show us that you understand it. And guess what? When you start medical school on day one, you know what you're going to be doing? You're going to be having a vast amount of information at a very fast pace, with very deep complexity, and having to understand that. So you are, by studying to be successful on the MCAT, you are developing skills that are going to make you such a strong student in medical school. So that's a good thing for you to know. We look at the application, of course, and your letters of recommendation. There might be questions about that later. In the screening process, I have to say, I think let me speak for almost all of the Texas schools, because we share this information with each other and have shared this information specifically and recently in the light of COVID. And probably most schools across the country will screen applications all the way through the cycle. So, Student Doctor Network does this thing like, oh my gosh, when did you submit? I got an interview invite. Well, and people then ask, when did you submit? Like, that matters. So it really doesn't matter, because we are screening. We're going to do 1,000 interviews at our place, but we're not going to invite like 1,000 people in July and August. We have to see what comes and see. So we are constantly rescreening. So an application, your your application is going to come across many, many times through the cycle. And I think most people do it like that. Okay. And I think almost every school in the nation is going to, I don't think, I know that almost every school in the nation is going to do a virtual interview setting. We thought actually that they went a lot better than we had anticipated in terms of getting to meet you. Of course, it's better in an in-person setting, but we'll also then next year probably be able to have on-site visits throughout the cycle. So that's what we hear from the majority of schools in a national setting. So there's screening, letters of recommendation. In Texas, the TMDSAS system, and I think Belinda's out there listening, so she's going to correct us in the chat. She's going to correct me in the chat if I give you any erroneous information, so any misinformation. She's going to correct it for me. But you can use the same letter. We'll take a letter that's a year old as long as it's kind of revisited and redated. Okay. And the deadline was pushed in the COVID cycle last year to November the 15th, and we're leaving those pushed deadlines in place. So make sure you go to TMDSAS to look and see what's happening there. You've got CASPERs and MMIs and interviews. This year, the AAMC opened up the VITA very quickly, which is a video interview, and schools were able to select a few questions, and sometimes that replaced an interview, and sometimes it augmented the interview process. Our interview process here is pretty standard with 2 traditional 20 to 30 minute interviews with a faculty member and a senior student. We did those through video through Zoom. We're all Zoom experts now, right? And then we also asked for an optional SOVI, which we will be doing again. SOVI is a standardized one-way video interview. We give you lots of leeway. It's a chance when the committee member says, gosh, I would have loved to have met that person and seen that person in action. It's a way for you to answer a question, give us a little 2-minute presentation on your answer, and then we get to see you in person. And you can go look at it ahead of time. You can prepare notes. You can prepare your answer. You can do it a million times before you submit it. The purpose is not to like, what's your snap judgment answer? That's not, it's just to say, kind of just to see who you are. Oh, thank you, Belinda. So Belinda's putting some resources in there for you. CASPER, MMI, SJT or standardized judgment test, the AAMC, some schools are piloting that this year. It's finally ready. Standardized judgment test. We use the CASPER, which is a similar thing, which is going to ask you, what would you do in this kind of a situation? That's another talk later. And there is a new thing on the scene called Duet. It's the CASPER company. It's the Altus company. So you can go look and see. That's a measure of fit, which I think might be interesting. So we'll keep our eye on that. And then your committees do some sort of final review. Some people have formulae. Some schools will add up points or manipulate metrics to have a score and a ranked list. We have a pool. We just look at our pool. Everybody in the country does a holistic review process. And I want to dispel a myth that's common. Holistic review means that we are looking for a balance, but what we really mean is we need to see strength in metrics, personal attributes, and experiences. All 3 areas. That's a 3-legged stool there. If you sit on that stool with strength in all those areas, you're good. If one of them is a toothpick, the stool, you cannot sit on that stool. Okay, it's not strong enough. We see people all the time, and amazing numbers, and it says, do you have healthcare experience? And the answer is N. No. Do you have community service? N. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's just not gonna stand up. So we need balance. I all of these are little, then there are a million more components of the application. And by the way, your Texas schools and the TMDSAS, we add questions every year. So it's over 200 questions now. It takes hours and hours. It takes an average of 16 to 20 hours to fill out. And that's why you start it now, assembling all these things in your shoebox, in your virtual shoebox. I wanted to point out photos because photos, now some people don't look at photos because it's a bias. Okay. I think that every school watches for bias very carefully. Okay. What the photos, we have chosen to keep the photos because it tells us about judgment and it tells us about professionalism. And when I look at a photo, when our other committee members look at a photo on an application, I am thinking to myself, is this the person I want to meet when I come to the ER and I'm bringing my mom because I think she's having a heart attack? Is this the face I want to see? Okay. Is it warm and smiling and professional looking? Or is there a person there kind of disheveled looking in a wrinkly t-shirt lounging in an unprofessional way? Or cut out of a party scene where I can see people's there's nothing wrong with this. I hang around in a disheveled t-shirt all the time, but I'm not going to put that on my application to medical school, right? So those things, there have been applications that I have screened and I have said, I can't do this because I would say no to this person. And I hand it to several other members of our committee to look at, because for me, the photo would be a deal breaker because it just does not look like somebody I want to meet in the OR because they just look like a slob. It's shocked. Aren't you shocked that people would put any kind of a clip photo? Anyway, it needs a little attention. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention here was violations. So minors in possession, some campus things here and there. You just need to be honest. You need to be honest and tell us what you learned. So what you learned from this is a hugely important thing in this section and in lots of other sections. Okay, so so own it and show your remorse and how you're going to be better in the future. Okay. That's all I wanted to say there. Those are your 3 essays. This is in the personal statement web chats, and we'll talk later about it, but you need to, I just put them up there to remind you, you have to answer the prompt. So if it says explain your motivation and include the value of your experiences, you need to answer those parts of the prompt. So watch your prompts, use examples. And I would say, so yes, you need to, yes, if you're a re-applicant, you need to rework that, right? It's been a year. It's been a year of maturation and growth and new experiences. So please tell us about them. And I like, we see your personal attributes all over the place in this application. And so I would, when you're getting other people to read it now, I would ask them, am I telling my story? How is this coming out for you? How's my story look? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? And what personal attributes are coming across in that personal essay? Humility, confidence, teamwork, compassion and empathy, resilience, what's coming across there. And I'm going to show you what those are in just a minute. So you've seen this, the personal biography, and you get to also now tell us about most meaningful. Here, I just thought I'd show you, here's how it looks to us. When you fill out and you put 10 things under healthcare, and you put 3 things under leadership and 5 things under community service, this is what it looks like. I don't know what it looks like to you actually, but this is what it looks like to us. The activity name, the dates, location. I think you sort of average your hours per week and total hours. I think you get to input that. I don't think it's a calculated number. And then you get, I think it's 250 characters that you can tell us something. Okay. So this is okay. This person is a medical scribe, So you could have saved some words there and just said, worked closely with a physician. So, you know, that this is talking about their activity as a third person. I don't think that's very good. So use the first person, and it's good to tell us what the activity, what you did. Better to tell us a little detail about it, like documenting patient information, but what else? So that's good to list it. Better to tell me something about it, but what's the best thing? Meaning, value. What did you learn? Okay, so we get to it a little bit here. You know, I learned, the person could have said, I learned about the electronic health record and terminology. There are probably some deeper lessons in this experience that could have been conveyed about patient care, about the nature of the doctor-patient relationship, about lessons that you learned in there, right? So we want to see, don't save all that for the personal statement or the essays. Tell us, this is what I learned. I learned how difficult it is to tell people about a new problem, you know, and how the doctor really helped reassure a person that they were going to work on this, right? So I just thought I'd show you that, because I say good, better, best all the time, and that's an example of what we see. Remember, that's why you're doing this. Anything counts. Anything that's competitive, research or research awards, or the third ribbon on, you know, the poster for that research day or whatever. If you're nominated for something, put that. Okay. So think about that broadly. I'm going to go quickly through this because a lot of you have heard me many times, and it's in depth on the channel. And let's get to some questions here. Leadership is important. We added a question this year, so people applying now will see, you might not have been the officer of a club, but what leadership attributes do you have? What do you possess that you've learned maybe in different settings? Okay. Research is not a deal breaker for us. You need to know what schools it might be important to. So it's important to us. If you're a research person, that's awesome, but it's not a deal breaker as opposed to healthcare. So if the answer is no, I have no healthcare experience, that's probably a hard one to come back from for this cycle. Shadowing and scribing, and next in line, caregiving, a person or a family who has somebody with some needs in that home, are the high value things in that area. Okay. So you have to be in a room with a physician and watch what she is or he are doing with their patients. You know, what is that like? Community service, all good things are good. Remember, all good things are good, but the high value things put you in contact with a person. And we think that that grows a person in a better way. Okay. So you have to have some of those, even if you did that, what is it? The Austin 4000? I don't know. It's a bike ride, 4,000 miles to Alaska. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. But maybe a little more wonderful is the fact that you sat down at activity night at the old folks home and played bingo with somebody, or played Scrabble with a person, you know. So look at those things that connect heart to heart, hand to hand. BBBS, I'm waiting for more of these. We see a few every year. That's Big Brothers Big Sisters. Do you know what that organization is? If you don't, look into it. The impact that you can have on the future is endless. They find young people who might be at risk, and they pair them with mentors like you. And that's your big, you're the big and they're the little, and your commitment to them is 1 hour a month. That is nothing to change a person's life. So, and you could do some big service, big leadership if you did it with a group of your friends and all got littles, and then you all did sort of group activities. Okay. There's power in that. I haven't seen that in an application yet. So I'm waiting to see that. That's community service. You have heard me talk about a personal growth plan. I'm going to go over these very quickly. These are people who got out of their box. Amy was painfully shy. Remember her story, some of you? For the new ones, you can look up the long version of these stories at another web chat. Painfully shy. She made a deal with her friends and a pact to herself. She made goals that she would say, yes, I'll go to that party. Yes, I'll go to that event. And she would meet 3 new people and talk to them. 3 strangers, and she hated it. She hated it, but she kept doing it and she kept doing it. And now she's very comfortable talking to strangers. I said, I interviewed all these people. I said, well, gosh, you're like, we're having a nice conversation. And she said, yes, but I have had to work on it to convey, to get out of the fear and the anxiety that she had. Daniel is a white young man who, his major was Latin American studies, and he loved the language, he loved the literature, he loved the culture, he loved the people. He changed churches to go to a Hispanic church on Sundays so that he could be more immersed in the people and the culture he was loving and learning about. Ahmad is a Muslim young man who did plenty of things at his mosque. See out of the box, do you see out of the box here, out of a comfort zone? That's what this slide is all about. Ahmad went to the Christian residential facility and read the Bible to the residents there, not his book, right? Not his background, not his culture. So, but he stepped out to honor those people by reading them their book. I thought the committee thought that that was awesome too. John got out of his comfort zone by starting to do gymnastics as an adult. He was scared to death of breaking something, but he did it, and he did it successfully. Sarah and Trong quit social media and gaming because they realized that there were better ways to be spending their time with people. And Banahini, the genie, I'm there when you need me. That was his motto when he ran for president of the Chinese club. Banahini is African American. Again, out of your culture, out of your background, out of your comfort zone, into somebody else's world so that we can learn about each other. So I love this slide because Casper has kind of boiled down personal attributes. You could think of a million of them, right? But these are sort of the categories that almost anything could fit into. The AAMC has categories as well, but this they overlap with all of these, okay? So if you're thinking, what should I improve upon? I think I'm a pretty good person. I think we all like have enough self-esteem to know, maybe we're pretty good. But if you look at all of those things and reflect on those, how are you? How are you at communicating? How are you at collaboration? Do you have to like take over the whole project because you don't trust people? Or do you have to, do you sit back and like let others do it? So what is an ideal team member in various situations, that kind of thing? Are you a problem solver? How do you solve problems? Those things actually come up in the situational judgment tests and in Casper and things like that. And they are things that you can learn how to do. Be a better decision maker, okay? Personal growth plan. So I think I'm going to stop here because you've heard me say those things, and we'll go to questions.